Good afternoon and welcome. We are just going to do a quick AV check to make sure our YouTube stream has audio and visual working appropriately. This will be the scoping meeting for the Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning project. Thank you for joining if you're watching. We will be kicking off just in about 5 minutes at 2 p.m. Thanks again. Good afternoon and welcome. You are tuning in to the remote scoping meeting for the Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning proposal. For the record, the City Environmental Quality Review or seeker number is 24DCP124K. My name is Stephanie Shalhoub, and I'm the director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division at the New York City Department of City Planning. Evren Olker-Kajar is the deputy director of EARD and will co-host today's meeting. I want to thank everyone who has taken time out of their day to attend this meeting. And I would like to say that we will hear from anyone who wishes to speak and provide their testimony on today's topic. We also welcome written comments for this public scoping meeting through 5 p.m. on Monday, June 10th, 2024, and we provide written comments with the same time and attention that we do to any comments that will be provided today live at this meeting. Next slide, please. We will now proceed to the public scoping meeting for the Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning. Again, for the record, let me note that the City Environmental Quality Review or seeker application number for this proposal is 24DCP124K. Today's date is Thursday, May 30th, 2024, and the time is approximately 2:01 p.m. Next slide. Again, I'm Stephanie Shalhoub, Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division at the New York City Department of City Planning, and I'll be chairing today's scoping meeting. The Department of City Planning is acting on behalf of the City Planning Commission as the lead agency for this proposal's environmental review. As the lead agency, the department oversees the preparation and completion of the Environmental Impact Statement, or EIS, for this Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning proposal. Joining me are several colleagues from the Department of City Planning. As I mentioned, Evren Olker-Kajar is the Deputy Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division. Max Marinoff is the Project Manager for this proposal in EARD. Joshua Vogel is the lead planner for the proposal's land use application in the Brooklyn office, and Alex Summer is the director of the department's Brooklyn office. There are also several staff members joining, working in the background to ensure that this meeting today runs smoothly. So thank you everyone working for your assistance. Together today, we will receive your comments on the draft scope of work for the Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning proposal. The draft scope of work identifies the subjects that will be analyzed in the upcoming draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, and describes the methodologies that will be used in those analyses. The draft scope of work materials are posted online on the Department of City Planning's website. The purpose of today's public scoping meeting is to allow for public participation in the preparation of the DEIS at the earliest stage possible in the environmental review process. Specifically, scoping allows the public to help shape the DEIS before it is written. Toward that end, the department as lead agency will receive comments today on the draft scope of work from elected officials, government agencies, and representatives from the local community board, as well as those from the general public. We also welcome written comments on the draft scope of work, which can be submitted through 5 p.m. Monday, June 10th, 2024. At the end of the written comment period, the department as lead agency will review all comments, those we received today, as well as any written comments that we have received by the end of the comment period. After carefully reviewing all comments, the department will decide what changes, if any, need to be made to the draft scope of work, and we will issue a final scope of work. It is that final scope of work that serves as the basis for preparing the DEIS. Today marks the beginning of the written comment period on the draft scope of work. No decisions will be made today regarding the draft scope of work. Again, the purpose of today's meeting is to allow the public to provide their comments and to allow the department to listen to those comments. It's important that all voices are heard today. I'll now focus on the structure of today's meeting, which will be divided into 3 parts. During the first part, the applicant team will provide a brief overview of the Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning proposal. A representative from the applicant team's environmental consultant will provide a short summary of the draft scope of work. Together, this will be about 20 minutes. During the second part of the meeting, the department will hear testimony from elected officials, government agencies, and those speaking on behalf of the local community board. And then during the third and final part of the meeting, we will receive testimony from members of the general public. The meeting will only end when everyone who has signed up has had an opportunity to do so. Onto a few logistics. If you wish to speak and plan to access the meeting online using a computer, tablet, or smartphone, please register to speak during this meeting through the Park Avenue Brooklyn Rezoning Public Scoping Meeting on the NYC Engage portal, which can be found at www.nyc.gov/nycengage. Once you've registered through that process, a link to join us and provide your testimony will be emailed to you after you've completed the registration. We will then add you to our speakers list. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and you'll be promoted to panelist. This will allow you to unmute your microphone and the ability to turn on your camera if you wish. There will be a short period that it appears you're no longer in the meeting. Don't be alarmed, you will automatically rejoin the meeting as a panelist. When your name has been called, you'll be asked to convey your remarks. We do limit folks to 3 minutes to allow for everyone who wishes to speak a chance to do so. If you're participating online, a 3-minute timer will run on the screen. At the 3-minute time mark, your time will expire. At that time, you'll be asked to conclude your remarks. If you choose to turn on your camera, again, we will be able to see you. Thanks for your patience in this process. An additional note of instruction for those of you joining by phone, if we do have anyone dialing in and wish to provide testimony, please select *9 when prompted. Listen for me to call out the last 3 digits of your phone number, and at that point, you'll be given the temporary ability to share your testimony. You must press *6 to unmute, and we will be able to hear you speak. And then when your testimony is complete or your 3 minutes have expired, whichever comes first, you'll press *6 again to mute yourself. We would, however, like to encourage dial-in participants who wish to provide testimony to register via phone using the dial-in participant hotline information that was displayed at the beginning of this meeting. Please note that muting and unmuting speakers does take a moment, so thank you for your patience. On to time limits. Speakers from the general public have 3 minutes to provide testimony. There are a few exceptions to the 3-minute time limit. Elected officials, for example, are given the courtesy of jumping to the front of the queue and are not limited to 3 minutes. If anyone is joining on live stream and wishing to testify, please be mindful of potential background noise during your testimony. Make sure that the live stream is muted when you begin your testimony to avoid hearing an echo. Next slide. If you wish to provide written testimony, it can be submitted to the Department of City Planning through email or mail. Our mailing address is shown on this screen: 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. Attention to myself, Stephanie Shalhoub. We also have an email address set up for this project if you wish to provide your comments via email. The address is 24dcp124k_dl@planning.nyc.gov. This information can be found on the NYC Engage portal and on the Department of City Planning's website, nyc.gov/planning. As a reminder, we will accept comments through 5 p.m. Monday, June 10th, 2024. Next slide. All right, if you missed any of these instructions to participate, please visit nyc.gov/nycengage for instructions on how to participate and provide testimony. At this point, we'll begin the first part of the meeting where the applicant team will present an overview of the project, followed by a summary of the draft scope of work. I will turn it over to Benjamin Stark. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Benjamin Stark. I'm a land use attorney at Hirsch & Singer and Epstein. I'm here today representing Park Avenue Rezoning Partners, LLC, a consortium of educational institutions and property owners located on and adjacent to Park Avenue in Brooklyn's Community District 3. I first want to thank, on behalf of the applicant team, the planners and staff members of the Department of City Planning for hosting this meeting and for otherwise shepherding this important application toward the public review process. Next slide. The primary aspects of the Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning are a series of zoning map amendments to change 1961-era low-density manufacturing districts, which do not permit the use or development of school facilities or residential housing, to a, quote, mixed-use zoning framework that will permit the use and development of school facilities and residential buildings. Additional proposed actions include zoning text amendments to 1, create the proposed R61 zoning classification that would be adopted in a portion of the rezoning area. 2, to modify Appendix F of the zoning resolution to make a mandatory inclusionary housing area coterminous with the project area. And 3, to create the special mixed-use MX district in section 12390 of the zoning resolution, which will then be adopted throughout the rezoning area. With the approval of these actions, the Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning will facilitate the completion of 3 new modern schools for separate and independent school systems, together with the conversion of a 3-story office building to a school use for a total of 4 educational institutions within the proposed rezoning area. In addition, the proposed actions will facilitate development of 5 new mixed-use residential and commercial buildings, ranging from 7 to 11 stories, together with the enlargement of an existing 2-story pharmacy building to an 8-story mixed-use residential and commercial building. In total, on applicant-controlled property, the proposed rezoning is anticipated to facilitate the development of approximately 391 new residential units, of which 98 would be made permanently affordable. Note that additional residential development on, quote, non-applicant controlled property is also studied as part of the environmental review of the Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning, bringing the total anticipated residential development above 500 residential dwelling units. Next slide, please. Backing up for a moment, why is this application being pursued? The Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning is being pursued to help solve 2 interrelated problems. The exceptional growth in the school-age population within a community where a very large percentage of children attend private religious schools, and the continued challenge of meeting housing production needs in a community where an outsized share of households are rent burdened and where trends suggest the problem is worsening year by year. Next slide, please. The Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning helps address these challenges by focusing on 2 planning objectives. 1, the legalization of existing educational uses and development of new, sorely needed educational facilities. And 2, the development of new housing, including affordable housing, in a growing residential community where in certain areas, legacy manufacturing zoning districts are no longer representative of existing land uses and no longer support a consensus of local community development objectives. Next slide. In particular, the Park Avenue rezoning proposes zoning changes that will facilitate the development of school facilities along the side streets adjacent to Park Avenue through the adoption of an M14 R61 zoning classification. Next slide. The Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning proposes zoning changes that will facilitate the development of new mid-rise residential development along Park Avenue through the adoption of an M14 R7D zoning classification. Next slide. The proposed zoning changes are appropriate. As stated, the existing legacy manufacturing zoning districts are no longer representative of existing land uses, as well as ownership conditions. As shown on the land use map on the screen, the proposed rezoning area is not home to a preponderance of industrial land uses, shown in purple, that would support the continued existence of legacy manufacturing zoning classifications. Rather, the rezoning area has evolved as a natural extension of the existing residential communities it sits adjacent to, shown in yellow and orange shades on this land use map. Properties in the rezoning area have been acquired by educational institutions and religious organizations, shown in blue shading, as well as black shading, which represents vacant land, together with the operators of commercial uses like retailers and pharmacies. Next slide, please. The juxtaposition of the rezoning area, centered on Park Avenue, but bounded by Spencer Street to the west and Sanford Street to the east, with adjacent residential areas, can be seen with the existing condition aerial view shown on the screen. Cutting from the existing residential neighborhood west of Spencer Street to the mid-century era publicly owned Marcy Houses complex to the east, Park Avenue is a natural corridor for mixed-use, predominantly residential development. Next slide, please. And with that, the side streets just off the Park Avenue corridor are a natural location for public interest uses, like educational facilities, which are difficult to site given their need for large, underdeveloped footprints. Indeed, The Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning represents a unique opportunity to entitle multiple new schools within very close proximity to one another, just a short walk from their institution's respective catchment areas. In our view, the siting and legalization of these educational institutions adjacent to one another will help enforce this area as a school district and will help to minimize the impacts of busing and other traffic-related considerations. In particular, the Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning will facilitate the development and legalization of the following educational facilities. Next slide, please. First, on the north side of Park Avenue at 49 Spencer Street, the Beth Hana School proposes to construct a 5-story school building without setbacks on a 12,500 square foot lot it currently owns and which is currently vacant. Rising 60 feet and totaling approximately 60,000 gross square feet of area, inclusive of below-grade space, the school will serve as a private high school for girls. Next slide, please. Directly across the street from the Beth Hana School, Yeshiva Letzirim Satmar currently owns an existing 3-story building where, among other operations, it houses administrative functions associated with its educational mission. Approval of the proposed rezoning would allow the yeshiva to properly convert and legalize the building for educational instruction. No new development is proposed to this building, however. Next slide. Moving to the south side of Park Avenue at 84 Sanford Street, the Central United Talmudic Academy proposes to construct a 5-story school building without setbacks on a portion of the approximately 38,000 square foot lot it currently owns, and which is currently improved with 1-story warehouse buildings. In addition, Central United currently operates a legal school facility at this property pursuant to a previously approved variance by the Board of Standards and Appeals. Central United's student population has since grown rapidly, with more growth forecasted, necessitating the proposed expansion of its facilities. The new facilities, totaling approximately 130,000 square feet of gross floor area, will facilitate the transformation of Central United's campus into a kindergarten through high school institution. And the proposed facilities, rising 60 feet from current level, are proposed, like all other new facilities proposed as part of this application, to include outdoor rooftop play areas. Next slide. Finally, directly across the street from Central United's campus, Yeshivas Benos Ahavas proposes to construct a 5-story school building without setbacks on the 7,500 square foot lot it currently owns and which is currently improved with a 1-story warehouse building. Rising 60 feet and totaling approximately 38,000 gross square feet of area, inclusive of below-grade space, the school facility will serve as a private K-12 school. Next slide, please. As I previously noted, this across the street juxtaposition of the schools, and in this case, Central United's proposed new facilities are shown on the right, with Yeshiva Benos Ahavas' proposed new facility on the left, will help to establish this area as primarily a school district, an existing budding condition given Central United's current operations and the ownership conditions of developed and underdeveloped parcels held by the various institutions. Next slide, please. Back on Park Avenue, the applicants propose to develop or enlarge 6 mixed-use, predominantly residential buildings, each with a ground floor retail component. As limited by the proposed M14R70 mixed-use zoning classification. Next slide, please. Proposed buildings range in height from 7 stories to 11 stories. Unit counts range from just 38 total apartments proposed at 514 Park Avenue to 93 total apartments at 528 Park Avenue. In accordance with mandatory inclusionary housing, each building is proposed to devote up to 30% of new residential floor area as permanently affordable housing, depending on the final MIH option adopted with the application. Next slide. With their development, these proposed residential buildings will transform what is currently an underdeveloped but vital corridor connecting 2 existing and vibrant residential communities. Next slide. Into a modern mixed-use corridor that strengthens that existing vibrancy and which will support the proposed school-focused context located on the side streets just off the avenue. At this point in the presentation, I will hand things over to Abir Sabet from Philip Habib and Associates, the project's retained environmental consultants, who will discuss the proposed EIS framework and the draft scope of work.
Thank you, Ben. Good afternoon. I will provide an overview of the draft scope of work, which provides the framework for how the DEIS will be prepared. Next slide, please. The DEIS will be consistent with the guidance of the latest version of the City Environmental Quality Review Technical Manual, also referred to as the Seeker Technical Manual, which is the standard guidance document for environmental analysis and review in the City of New York. Seeker is a disclosure process by which decision makers evaluate the potential environmental consequences before approving a discretionary action. Seeker compares the future no action condition to the future with action condition through a reasonable worst case development scenario. The EIS will analyze the incremental changes that could reasonably be expected to occur if the proposed actions are adopted. Public comments will be incorporated into a final scope of work. Then a DEIS will be prepared in accordance with the final scope of work and then published for review and comment. Once published, a public hearing will be held on the DEIS in which all comments received during the hearing will be incorporated into the final environmental impact statement, or FEIS. Next slide, please. As detailed in the draft scope of work, a reasonable worst case development scenario, or RWCDS, was established for environmental analysis purposes for the 2030 analysis year. As discussed earlier, the hatched sites shown in the figure to the right are the 9 applicant-controlled sites, but the RWCDS would also include and analyze some non-applicant controlled sites, which are not hatched in the figure. As presented on the screen, a total of 12 projected development sites and 2 potential development sites were identified in the project area. As detailed in the draft scope, projected development sites are considered more likely to be developed by the 2030 analysis year, while potential sites are considered less likely to be developed over the same period. In the no action condition, it is assumed that 2 sites within the project area would be redeveloped on an as-of-right basis. At projected development site 2, the currently vacant site is assumed to be redeveloped with a mixed-use building containing commercial and medical office space. And at projected development site 12, the currently vacant site is assumed to be redeveloped with a 1-story commercial building. All other sites within the project area are assumed to remain unchanged from existing conditions. In the with action condition, it is assumed that new buildings comprising the total RWCDS would be completed and fully occupied on the 12 projected development sites. The total RWCDS for the projected development sites would comprise a combined total of approximately 786,500 GSF of building space, including approximately 479 dwelling units, medical office space, private school space housing 3 new private schools, commercial retail space, and accessory parking. Pursuant to the city's MIH program, up to 25 to 30% of the projected dwelling units would be designated as permanently affordable at an average of 60 to 80% of the area median income, depending on the selected option. Next slide, please. As shown in this table, when comparing the no action condition to the with action condition, the total RWCDS for the proposed actions is expected to result in the net addition of approximately 476 DUs, including up to 124 units that would be designated as permanently affordable pursuant to MIH option 1, approximately 202,000 GSF of private school space, 27,500 GSF of commercial retail space, and net decreases of approximately 40,250 GSF of medical office space, 18,000 GSF of office space, 11,400 GSF of warehouse space, and 101 parking spaces. In terms of population, the total RWCDS under the proposed actions could generate up to approximately 1,219 incremental residents, 43 incremental workers, and 1,835 students within the project area compared to no action conditions. With the reasonable worst case development scenarios established and using criteria outlined in the Seeker Technical Manual, the EIS will determine if significant adverse impacts would occur. Next slide, please. As detailed in the draft scope of work and shown on this slide, the proposed actions require consideration of 13 of the 19 impact categories outlined in the seeker technical manual. The draft scope of work provides a detailed outline of how the 13 technical areas will be examined, and for each of the technical areas, it identifies study areas, types of data to be gathered, and how these data would be analyzed and the potential impacts quantified when appropriate. Per the guidance of the Seeker Technical Manual, the proposed actions would not warrant analysis for the community facilities and services, shadows, historic and cultural resources, natural resources, solid waste and sanitation services, and energy technical areas. I will now briefly discuss a few of the technical areas to be analyzed in the DEIS. For example, as the proposed actions would introduce new residents to the area, an analysis of socioeconomic conditions is warranted. The residents introduced to the area by the proposed actions would also increase demand for use of publicly accessible open spaces, and therefore an analysis of open space resources is warranted. The proposed actions would also result in an increase in the number of vehicular trips and increased ridership on mass transit facilities, as well as affect pedestrian movements in the area due to the increased number of residents, workers, and students. Therefore, a detailed transportation analysis will be included in the DEIS, which will analyze the changes to traffic, transit, pedestrians, and street user safety as a result of the proposed actions. Due to the increase in the number of vehicular trips within the area, the DEIS will also study the project-generated effects on ambient noise and air quality conditions as a result of mobile sources. In addition, both the noise and air quality analyses will study the effects of stationary sources. Since the project area is in an existing manufacturing zoning district, the presence of industrial uses within a 400-foot radius cannot be ruled out, and therefore the DEIS will also provide an industrial source analysis to determine the potential impacts of emissions from any existing industrial or manufacturing facilities. As the RWCDS identifies 12 projected development sites, which are expected to have overlapping construction schedules, a construction impact assessment will be provided in the EIS pursuant to Seeker Technical Manual guidance. Next slide. In addition, the DEIS will include a mitigation chapter, which describes mitigation measures to address any significant adverse impacts that are identified in the DEIS. Where impacts cannot be mitigated, they will be identified as unavoidable adverse impacts. An alternatives chapter will also be included in the DEIS to evaluate alternative development proposals that may reduce or eliminate any significant adverse impacts. The alternatives are usually defined when the full extent of a proposed action's impacts have been determined. As of now, the DEIS is expected to study a no-action alternative, which describes the conditions that would exist if the proposed actions were not implemented, and a no significant adverse impacts alternative, which presents a scenario where all action-generated impacts are either eliminated or avoided. Additional alternatives may be developed during the scoping process in coordination with the lead agency. The draft scope of work can be viewed in its entirety online on DCP's website as seen at the bottom of the slide. Thank you for your time. This marks the end of the applicant's presentation on the Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning and overview of the seeker framework. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Stephanie Chalou from DCP.
Thank you, Abir, and to the applicant team for that presentation. Next slide. And next slide, we will now move on to part 2 of this scoping meeting. At this point in the process, we will be receiving testimony from elected officials, community board leaders, and government agencies. To review the protocol, when it's your turn to speak, your name will be called and you'll be promoted to panelist. This will allow you to unmute your microphone and the ability to turn on your camera. There's a period where it appears that you're not in the meeting. Don't be alarmed. You'll automatically rejoin the meeting as a panelist. If anyone that's potentially viewing this meeting on the live stream, and if anyone is experiencing technical issues that prevent you from sharing your testimony, there is some guidance on NYC Engage in the how-to guides page. We also have a dial-in participant hotline that you can feel free to call. The phone number is any of these phone numbers shown at the top of the screen, including 877-853-5247. When prompted for a meeting ID, please dial the meeting shown at the bottom of this screen, 618-237-7396, and when prompted for a password, dial 1. All right. So in the group of elected officials, government agencies, and those speaking on behalf of the community board, we do not have any registered speakers. So if you are viewing via YouTube or participating in some other way and you are in that group and you want to provide testimony, please do complete that registration process now. But seeing that we do not have members of this group signed up to speak, we will now proceed to part 3 of this public scoping meeting, where members of the general public are invited to speak and provide testimony for up to 3 minutes. Again, if anyone is wishing to testify and having any difficulties, please follow the instructions in red on the bottom of this screen in order to for us to get you registered to speak. I am checking our registration process now and seeing that we do not have any registered speakers at this time, nor do we have any attendees who have joined by phone. If there is anyone who wishes to provide testimony, we're going to ask you to please register via NYC Engage at this time on the upcoming meeting page. Let's go to the slide with the 5-minute counter. As we do not have any registered speakers at this time, we're going to take a 5-minute recess to allow anyone who might be watching on YouTube or otherwise to have an opportunity to register to speak. There should be the next slide that has the registration instructions as well as the timer. Great. So we will reconvene around 2:36 to see if anyone who has decided that they wish to provide testimony to have an opportunity to complete our registration process. We will return in about 5 minutes. Thanks, everyone. Hello, welcome back. You are tuning into the remote public scoping meeting for the Park Avenue Brooklyn rezoning proposal. Again, for the record, I'll note that the City Environmental Quality Review or seeker number for this project is 24DCP124K. We are currently on part 3 of the public scoping meeting, where members of the public are invited to speak for up to 3 minutes to provide their testimony on the proposal. We had just taken a 5-minute recess to allow anyone who had not initially had a chance to register to have a chance to do so. In this pause, we have not had any new folks sign up to register, nor do we have anyone that has joined via phone. At this point, do we have anyone with us today who wishes to provide testimony? Hearing none at this point, we will move to close the public scoping meeting. If we can go to our next slide, I believe we have information on providing written comments. If anyone wishes to provide written testimony, please note that you can submit your written comments to us through 5 p.m. on Monday, June 10th, 2024. And you can also mail or email those to us at the addresses shown here. Email them to us at 24dcp124k_dl@planning.nyc.gov, or mail them to us at the New York City Department of City Planning. Attention myself, Stephanie Shalou, at 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. Again, note the comment period will last until 5 p.m. Monday, June 10th, 2024. At this time, we will close the public scoping meeting. The time is approximately 2:39 p.m. Thank you all for your time and attention this afternoon. Take care.